Despite being questioned on his will to continue fighting in the sport of MMA, Rory MacDonald survived the traps of jiu-jitsu specialist Neiman Gracie, defended his Bellator welterweight title, and advanced to the final of the Bellator welterweight Grand Prix. Hello everyone, my name is Danny Segura and welcome to MMA Fighting's Bellator 222 post-fight show. I'm joined by, you know her, Phoenix Carnevale, from the MMA Beat, Access TV, UFC Unfiltered, and many other places. She's going to be helping me break down all those storylines and all the action from tonight's card in New York City. As I mentioned right at the top, we saw Rory MacDonald defend his Bellator welterweight title, and there were a lot of questions leading up into this fight about where he was at mentally and whether or not he wanted to continue fighting in the sport of MMA. You saw the fight. Can we put those questions behind?
I think we can. It might be a different Rory MacDonald, but it's definitely a very skilled Rory MacDonald. Years ago, I saw him and I was really impressed by just how technical he was. And back then, maybe he had a little bit more of that like grr, that fighting spirit. But I think now he still has it, but it's much more of a mature, more competitive Rory MacDonald.
So obviously, I don't need to ask you where is he going to go next. We know what lies ahead of him. He's going to be fighting Douglas Lima in a rematch, part of the Bellator welterweight Grand Prix final. Bellator wants that fight to happen in September. Rory just said at the press conference he's looking maybe November or December. Just real quick, who do you think has had the most impressive run in this Bellator tournament, Rory or Douglas?
I'm going to say Rory, just because of the amount of adversity that he's had to deal with. Douglas Lima is definitely a force to be reckoned with. It's nice to kind of see these two very talented fighters collide.
So we've known Rory for being this fighter that's like on edge and just
Right.
a very intense fighter. Now we see him, a lot with a different demeanor, a lot more calm. Would you be able to say either fighter is more dangerous?
It just depends. I mean, looking at the situational and the positional awareness that Rory MacDonald has, he'll strip the hand immediately. He gets out of position immediately. He rolls out of things immediately. He's just so quick. He just has such great instincts. I think he's very, very difficult to defeat. I think he's very, very difficult to compete up against. I think that his fight IQ is only getting better with age. He's like a fine wine with this particular situation. Douglas Lima, we know he's just a beast, and he is unpredictable, and that unpredictability might be the perfect thing against Rory. So it's a good stylistic matchup.
Now, in the co-main event of the card, or the main event, if you ask Chael Sonnen, we saw Lyoto Machida stopping Chael Sonnen in the second round. So that wasn't the biggest news from that matchup. Leaving the biggest news was that Chael Sonnen decided to call it quits on a very long career, a very legendary career. I mean, the names that he's fought some of the greatest of all time. Were you surprised by the retirement, and what do you think Chael Sonnen's legacy is going to be in MMA now that he's called it quits?
I wasn't 100% surprised, and the only thing is because I was reading into a lot of his wording the last couple weeks was about, I regret never really having fun in there, and a lot of this hinted at signs that he was looking back at his career. But he also talked about, possibly fighting Bader, so I thought maybe in his own mind, it was up in the air that the results of tonight would tell him where he needed to be in this sport or where he was emotionally in this sport based off his performance. So when it happened, I was saddened, but I was also a bit glad too, because he's a great person to celebrate. He's had his ups and downs. He has an amazing Wikipedia page. So yeah, I'm happy for Chael in some way.
What mark do you think he'll leave on the sport? Because he's been, headlining tons of events and quite a popular fighter.
He's fought anybody, and he's entertained everybody. He said something that really sparked my interest. He said, I think I brought about this showmanship in this sport for better or for worse. So he does recognize it brought about some bad behavior, and he also recognizes that it made things more entertaining. So the good came with the bad, and I think he recognizes that. And I think he brought a lot of people a lot of joy and a lot of laughs, too.
Yeah. All right, real quick, favorite moment of his career, in or out of the cage?
Me arguing with him about how New York pizza sucks, and then eventually him realizing I was right. No, that's not a career moment. I think seeing him dominate Anderson Silva was like kind of shocking until, of course, Anderson pulled the submission victory over him. But he's always been fun to watch.
Yeah. I think that's got to be mine as well. At that time, I was just a fan of the sport, and I clearly remember that day, where I was, what happened. I remember everyone going crazy over the result. Truly one of the greatest comebacks in MMA history. Let's talk about Lyoto Machida now. I think he looked really, really good. I think, probably one of the best performances he's had in recent years. I'm curious to see if you share the same sentiment.
Danny, you and I have talked about this ad nauseum about us thinking that fighters should go up if they can go up in weight, and that if they're healthier, they perform better. And I think fighting closer to your true weight is a very good decision to make, especially as you get up there in age, because cutting weight as you get older becomes harder and harder and much more difficult on the body, and it's just not a healthy situation. So I hope he stays at lightweight. I hope he stays at light heavy. I think it's a better decision for him, and I think we'll see a better Lyoto Machida that way too.
So this was supposed to be a #1 contender fight, more for him, but also, probably for Chael if he would have picked up a win. And he talked about possibly getting either a title shot, 185 or 205. I'm guessing what you just...
I say stay at 205. You're 41 years old. You fought Bader before in 2012. It's interesting to see you guys now as sort of senior athletes. Senior, I mean, just,
Yeah.
But yeah, I
You're
just...
calling him old?
No. I just think it's a safer bet. I like that better.
I'm going to skip some fights because, the order of this card was...
it's all over the place.
Was all over the place, So let's talk about another title fight that went down. Kyoji Horiguchi, Darrin Caldwell. Bit of an interesting fight, hard to score. It was clear that Caldwell was in control for the most part of the fight, but Kyoji was the one doing most of the attacking. Just first of all, before we discuss kind of like the storylines coming out of it, how'd you score that fight? Who do you think won?
Oh, I think the judges went with the right decision. I think that just because you're holding someone down, this is not wrestling where you pin someone and that's how you win. It is about damage. It's about advancing position. It's about doing something once you've gained that position. And he just kind of laid him against the octagon, and we didn't see much else happening. We did in rounds 1 and 2. Yes, there were some beautiful elbows. There were some, fights are won and lost in transitions. And then I don't know if DC got tired. I'm not sure what happened there.
Yeah, it was definitely a bit of an odd fight. So this is an interesting result because Horiguchi is now a champ, but in the same weight class, he just has 2 different belts in different promotions, which looks very cool, by the way. We just saw Henry Cejudo destroy Marlon Moraes. A lot of people are claiming, he could be one of the best bantamweights, if not the best bantamweights. We just saw Horiguchi, have a pretty admirable performance. Where do you think he ranks among the best bantamweights right now?
I'm a little high on Cejudo right now. I thought the way he just adjusted against Marlon really impressed me. I always thought, Cejudo had some striking, but to be able to do what he did to Marlon, especially the knees and the clinch, I wouldn't see that from Henry Cejudo. So I would love to see this Horiguchi matchup. That would be so much fun. That's always fun to see the best of the best. But I think Cejudo might have that fight if it ever happened.
What do you think is next for Caldwell? I mean, this was a pretty big fight for him, big opportunity. The fans weren't digging it, if I'm being honest. I mean, I was in the arena and they were booing. What do you think is next for him? And
I think he spends the next couple of days with his coaches saying, what do I have to do? What do I need to work on? Where do things go wrong? I think it's going to be quite obvious to him what he needs to do. I think he's a smart athlete. I think he's a very good athlete as well, and I think he does his homework.
So a couple of other fights worth mentioning. Dillon Danis remained undefeated, 2-0 now. What did you make of his performance? First round submission, pretty nice. And where do you think he goes next? He did survive the Drake curse, which is pretty big.
Look, I think, sky's kind of the limit for Dillon Danis. He really is an impressive jiu-jitsu practitioner. I would like to see more of what he has to offer as an MMA fighter, Watching his jiu-jitsu, he's really skilled. I heard his corner actually tell him, calm down, calm down. I think he was a little hype in there, and as soon as he kind of went back to his zen place, his jiu-jitsu place, then he was able to pull off the submission victory. He was hunting for submissions, and he found the belly down armbar, which, obviously worked for him. So I just think we're just going to continue to see him compete, and we'll continue to see him compete with the best of the best. I thought it was a little weird, him calling out John Jones, and I forget who else he said, and I was like, well...
Rory MacDonald.
Yeah, it's different weight class, different promotions. What's up?
I mean, he's in the Dillon Danis weight, so he would have to drop to, 170 to fight Rory, but yeah.
Yeah.
Another fight worth mentioning, Juan Archuleta knocking out Eduardo Dantas, spoiling his featherweight debut. What'd you make of that performance? Pretty impressive. I believe he's now 23-1, which is a great record. And what do you think is next for him?
Archuleta, man. movement,
That right
speed,
hand,
the right hand. You can see sort of the influences of the guys that he trains with. He just had fantastic movement in there, a lot of power, and just great footwork. You know, you saw him pedaling out, as Daniel Cormier would say, he was on his bike, and then when he did blitz in or when he did strike, he threw multiple strikes, and he knew that that overhand was going to cause damage because that was just the one shot that he threw. He didn't follow up with anything else because he didn't need to. He's a powerhouse. He's an interesting fighter.
A lot of things happen in the Bellator 222 card, but lastly, I want to touch on Aaron Pico.
Yeah.
He suffered another loss. He drops to 4-3 in his professional MMA career. Shout out to Adam Boric because he had a super impressive performance, a beautiful flying knee, but this puts a lot of questions as to how Bellator is matchmaking Aaron Pico, because we know he's very skilled. We know he has the wrestling. We know he's a skilled boxer as well. But he is very young in MMA, and he's getting guys that are 2-3 times more experienced than he is.
I think he actually said this in the interview with you, that he would fight people he was more matched up with, but they won't fight him. So the only people who will take fights with him are these guys that are more experienced than him, that know that they can beat him. So it's kind of a sticky situation for him because of his pedigree. Maybe people that are supposedly on his level don't want to fight him. I don't know. I almost wish that he would have had an opportunity to brew, but I think Bellator's perspective is let him grow here. Yeah. You know, if you look at a lot of fighters that have had their losses earlier in their career and now are super successful, maybe that's what they're thinking. They're thinking, we're okay with him having his wins and losses here, and when he ties it all together, we'll still be here for him. And I don't think that he's in jeopardy of getting cut, is what I'm saying.
I've gotten a lot of Twitter comments about this, and people have, you know, been arguing with me about this, that maybe the media hyped him up a lot. Maybe he's not as good as we think he is. Do you think that could possibly be the case here?
I think it is. I think that it's not that he's not good, it's that he's inexperienced. Ring generalship is a word, well, 2 words that they use in boxing all the time, and we bring it into MMA because it means something. It's not that you're not skilled in the gym or that you're not skilled, but tying it all together is very difficult. Sometimes people have way longer amateur careers and then come to the big leagues, and you know, he kind of jumped right into the big leagues.
All right. Before we close this out, any other performance, any other thing that happened on the card that you'd like to highlight?
I always like to shout out to the women's fights. That, you know, there were a lot of really good women's fights. It was kind of sad to see Heather Hardy get dominated like that. The girl she fought had a very good game plan, though. Tie her up and then just keep her down on the ground and fight her where she was weak. So it was tough to see. I hope Heather bounces back. She's such a great fighter, such a great spirited person. So that was tough to watch as a big Heather Hardy fan.
All right, Phoenix. Well, I appreciate you joining me in this post-fight show. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your great insight. Guys, keep it locked here at MMAfighting.com. We've got you covered with interviews, everything you need to know about Bellator 222. So keep it locked here at MMAfighting.com. We'll see you guys later.